If there is one thing I really struggle to do in life, it is do a YouTube intro that doesn't sound really weird and like over enthusiastic. So, hi. I actually haven't posted on the channel in close to a year now. I love to post something random on here and then dip out for a while, but this year, I'm gonna change that, she says. Who knows, maybe. But all that matters really is that we're both here right now. And if you've clicked onto this video, you know that I'm tier ranking every book that I read in 2024. And the fact that we're quite late into January at the minute, I was like, oh, have I missed the boat with this? Should I film this sooner? Is no one gonna care? But actually I realised that I make the rules on this channel. I want to film it, so I'm gonna. And if you're watching it, thank you. So 2024 was actually quite a good reading year for me. I read 54 books in total, which for me is a lot. I know some people go crazy and are reading like 200 plus, but I am a slow reader and I go through little reading clumps as well. So 54 for me really is good. And I've never done a tier ranking video before, but I feel like this is going to be fun just to go through a little recap of everything that I read last year, have a little chat about it, and find out where I'm ranking them. I actually just managed to delete the whole of the tier maker thing that I'd set up, but I have put it back together now, and I now need to figure out how to like screen record it because I am really technologically inept. I look at a computer and it just sort of makes my brain empty and it's not good. I think I've done it. Whoa, not me being really smart. Anyway, here are my tiers for this video. It kind of annoys me that the colours feel wrong. It's got like red at the top and green at the bottom. It should be flipped, but this is just how the website sets it up and I can't be bothered to change them. So this is what we're dealing with. And I feel like it's quite important to note, for the purpose of this video, these tiers do not correlate to star ratings for me. These are more vibes. So even if I rated a book 5 stars, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go in the top tier here, because the top tier is that it altered my brain chemistry. I am a different person since completing that book. And I really think that there are 5-star reads that I absolutely loved, but fundamentally it didn't change me. And then there are some where I'm a different girl now since getting through that. I also have 6 tiers, not 5, so it would have been hard to make them line up to star ratings anyway. Although I suppose people do talk about having 6-star reads, so then maybe technically altered my brain chemistry equals 6-star god tier reads for me. But anyway, the tiers we have got are altered my brain chemistry. The second one is I am passionate about this. So that is a book that I absolutely love. I'm passionate about it. I want to tell other people about it. I want to recommend it to friends and family and even my foes. I want people to read this book. I'm passionate about it, but the altering of my brain chemistry is just not quite there. The next one down, I've put close but no cigar, and weirdly, I don't like this phrase because I kind of don't understand like the etymology of it, like close but no cigar. Why do we say that as a phrase? Don't know. But it is the one that is most fitting for this. It is a book that I really enjoyed, but it wasn't quite up there for me. So even though this is third on the list and kind of middle-ish, that doesn't necessarily mean it's like a mid or an average book. Like, it's a really good book, but then there was a little bit of something missing for me. It didn't wow me, it didn't rock my world, it didn't shake my boots. It was close, but no cigar. The next one is Go Gal, Give Us Nothing. And it's just a book where I was like, it was fine. It gave us nothing, didn't really change me. I was happy to finish it, but I don't know, it just didn't do anything for me. The next one down is A Waste of My Time. And there are gonna be a couple that fall into this one. A book where I probably should have DNF'd it, but didn't. I have a real problem with DNFing books. If I have committed to it and I get to like even 20 or 30% of the way through, if I've made that commitment to start it, I feel like that's time wasted if I don't see it through to the end. And actually this year I do want to be better at DNFing books, because otherwise I'm just wasting time by torturing myself through the rest of it if I'm not enjoying it. And then the bottom tier is Gwen Stefani should read this. Because of the audio that is like, I wouldn't wish this upon my worst enemy.
I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy, unless, of course, we're talking about my enemy, Gwyneth Paltrow. Fuck you, Gwyneth Paltrow. You know what you did.
Hello, this is Editing Jess, and I've just realised that I made a really big error in saying Gwen Stefani and not Gwyneth Paltrow, as if this isn't something that I quote all the time. I don't know what my brain was doing earlier when I typed in Gwen Stefani and I went, yeah, sure, that's the right name. But I filmed this video now. I'm not refilming this video. So I'm so sorry, Gwen Stefani. I have nothing against you. And actually, I really don't think there are going to be many books that fall into this one. There's maybe like one off the top of my head where I know it's going to be in that. But this is a book where I just hated it There's nothing more to say. And I feel like I'm kind of stating the obvious here, but if you don't agree with any of my rankings, that's fine. I feel like on certain corners of the internet, if you like a book that someone else doesn't like, or vice versa, people get so enraged about it. So it's totally okay if you have different opinions to me, but let me know about them in a nice way and we can all be friends around here, because it's interesting that we all like different things. Okay, without further ado, let's start ranking. All of these book covers I've actually uploaded in a random order, not necessarily the order that I have read them in, but I think I'm just gonna go based on the first one that is uploaded here, which is Good Bad Girl by Alice Feeney. And this book I actually did like. It's quite a different genre for me. I don't read much that's in the mystery and thriller genre. I'm such a mood reader that it just really takes me being in a very specific mood to want to read something like that. But this one I did enjoy. I wouldn't say I'm passionate about it though. Like, if this genre is your cup of tea, I would recommend it, but I'm not enthusiastic about recommending it to everyone. So for me personally, this is close but no cigar. Next up, we've got Shy by Max Porter. And this one is quite a short story and I really liked it. I feel like it is very different to the types of things that I usually read. And I do have this problem that as soon as I finish a book and I start a new one, I forget what the previous books have been about. I really have bad recall for plots, characters, storylines, whatever, but I do really distinctly remember like feelings and overall vibes and whether I enjoyed something or not. And this one, again, I feel like I'm not necessarily passionate about it, but it was a very good book. It's one of those ones that feels quite poignant, so it feels a bit weird putting in the third category down, but I've already explained why these tiers are the way they are. I'm just sort of overthinking this, but it's close but no cigar for me. The next one is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I am actually not sure about this one. So I actually read the Once Upon a Broken Heart series first, not realising that it sort of followed on timeline-wise from the Caraval series, and then I read Caraval afterwards. And actually I really don't think it makes much of a difference reading it that way around, even though I knew how some of the things within that trilogy would end up because I read the second trilogy first. I don't think it ruined the story and the journey of how it got there for me. That being said, I really didn't enjoy it as much as Once Upon a Broken Heart. It's got to go close but no cigar again. However, Stephanie Garber's writing I absolutely love, and a couple of days ago she announced her new book, which is coming out I think later this year, and it's called Secrets of Alchemy, and I am so excited for that because her writing is brilliant, and I think that is going to be a book that I am very, very interested in when that's released. Next up is The List by Yomi Adegoke, and this book I have beef with. I really did not gel with this book, which I was quite surprised about because I think prior to me reading it, I had heard lots of good things about it. But there was something about this book that just rubbed me up the wrong way a lot of the time. Firstly, I do think one of my issues is reading books where influencers are involved, considering I've been a content creator for many years now. I think social media is portrayed really badly in books most of the time. It focuses on a lot of the bad parts of it. Books often tar like influencers or content creators with the same brush, and it makes the whole industry out to be a really bad one, and they neglect to think about any of the good parts. So I think that was maybe my first issue with it. And then secondly, from what I remember, I actually read this really early on last year, so it would have been pretty much a year ago now. I think I read it in January. And I think there was something that happened towards the end of the book with a friend of one of the main characters. And I think it could have been a really good plot point had it been done differently. But for me, I'm recommending this to Gwen Stefani, you know? Next, we've got The Ballad of Never After, which is the second in the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. And I feel like it makes sense to do these ones together because they are a series rather than doing them all out of order. So we're going to do Once Upon a Broken Heart first. And I think for this one, I'm going to do I Am Passionate About This, because that trilogy, I loved it so much. It revived a reading slump for me last year. I was so taken with the story, the world, the way it was told, the writing. Like, I really loved everything about it. But I do sometimes find that the first book in a series isn't necessarily the best because it's setting up the overall story, and I feel like that's why it didn't alter my brain chemistry, but I am immensely passionate about it. So next up, we've got The Ballad of Never After, and again, I think I'm going to say I'm passionate about it. And then A Curse for True Love, which is the third. Am I going to say that it altered my brain chemistry? I think I am, you know, because I just think as the final instalment to a story that I really loved so much, by the time I was done with it, bearing in mind I read them back to back, so to me it's almost like one long book rather than 3 books, and sometimes I actually find it quite difficult then to distinguish between the individual books within a series. But I think as the final act of that story, I just loved it so much. And I loved the fact that even though I read a lot of fantasy books, this was quite different for me because it's more of like that fairy tale setting rather than dragons and war and swords and loads of fighting. This had a much more whimsical take on it, and I really fell in love with the characters, the story, every single thing about it. I just loved. Next up, we've got The Serpents in the Wings of Night. And I will say, the title of this book, it does make sense once you read it and once you know what it's about. This is actually maybe an important point to note about me, is that I go into almost every book I read blind. I know very little about every book I read before I start reading it. So when I was about to read it, I was like, what is this title? And it almost put me off reading it a little bit. I don't like it. And it kind of sounds like it has come from a fantasy book random word generator, as harsh as that may sound. But the book itself, I'm passionate about. I really liked this. And before reading this, I actually didn't think I was much of a vampire girl. I've read the odd bit with vampires in, but they're usually part of a wider fantasy landscape, I guess, whereas in the Crowns of Nyaxia series it is pretty much just vampires and humans, and I didn't think I was gonna like that, but I did. I was into that. I really liked the characters in this. I love a book with trials, so anything that is like the Hunger Games, Throne of Glass, stuff like that, where people have got to fight to survive. I'm big into that. I'm passionate about it. I feel like maybe, again, because they're part of a series, I didn't do this with Caraval, but I should go through and find the other ones to talk about the series in one go. So next I read Six Scorched Roses, which is a novella, and I read this in between the 2 books rather than reading it after the duet because Emmy told me that I should, and she was right with that. I loved this as a novella. Sometimes I feel like novellas are really good to give a little bit more context to a story, or just to get like a little bit more out of the world, and often I find that they're like good but not great, and this novella in particular I thought was great. So I'm going to say that I am passionate about this. And I think if you are going to read the Crowns of Nyaxia series, do what I did and read it in between The Serpents of the Wings of Night and The Ashes and the Starborn King, or whatever it's called. Is that what it's called? Star-Cursed King. I got it wrong. The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. But like I said, it sounds a little bit like a fantasy book random name generator. That's my only gripe with it though. But for The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, I'm actually going to put that in Close but No Cigar. For me, it was a little bit slower because the trial is over and it's the next part of the story. It felt like it dragged in places a little bit, and then sometimes I feel like the follow-up just falls a little bit flat. And I know that the next Crowns of Nyaxia book, which is part of the next duet, is out. I'm not in a rush to read it though. I think I will at some point, but at the minute I've got more books on my TBR where I am like, I really want to read this, but I think because of The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, I'm not desperate to get onto the next one. Next is Finale, but because I wasn't really keeping series together at the time, I obviously did Caraval. The second one is somewhere within this list, and then Finale has now come up, so I feel like I need to find Legendary. It's here at the bottom. And for me, I think they're all gonna go in Close but No Cigar. I did really enjoy them, and I think if you do want to read both trilogies and to read them in order, they are worth reading. They are really good, but Once Upon a Broken Heart does make sense by itself. I felt like I wasn't really missing any world building from not having read Caraval first. If you read the synopsis of both and you're not particularly fussed about how Caraval sounds, I would say just read Once Upon a Broken Heart. That I want everyone to read. Caraval, if you want to, read it and you'll probably enjoy it. Because of the way these book covers are cropped as they go in, sometimes I look at it and I go, I don't even know what that is, but I think that is called The Breakdown. It is, I was correct. Okay, Breakdown by Kathy Sweeney. I actually soft DNF'd this. I put it down, I want to say maybe at the 30 to 40% mark, and then I did go back to it a different day, and when I say a different day I think I mean like months and months later. I am actually gonna put it in Go Girl Give Us Nothing. It was fine, but because I do mostly read romance and fantasy, when I'm reading something that is from a different genre, I feel like it needs to be quite standout for me to be truly like raving about it. And this one, it was all right. I got through it in the end. Did I love it? No. Did it make me see the world differently? No. Did I think it was a bit of a tedious drag at times? Yeah. But was it a waste of my time? Not quite. Then we've got I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki. And it feels weird ranking this one because of what the book is. It is effectively a transcript from therapy sessions, so to then put it in a ranking system feels a bit strange. So I feel like this one should probably stay uncategorized, because if I published notes from my therapy sessions and then someone started being really mean about it, that would probably be my undoing. I feel like that's the right choice. Next we've got Talking at Night by Claire Daverley, and this book, I actually think I'm gonna put it in Altered My Brain Chemistry, and not in a dramatic way, it was in quite a subtle way. I'm getting a phone call. Hello? No, it's not. I think you've got the wrong number. They thought I was called Tanya. I'm not. Where was I? This book, I think, did alter my brain chemistry, but not in a dramatic way, in quite a subtle way. But I loved this book. It's one of those books where I felt really invested in it. If you're a Sally Rooney fan, I think you would really like this book. And it's one of those ones that I feel like a lot of people wouldn't gel with. If books frustrate you when there is a lot of miscommunication and sort of right person, wrong time, but it is over a very long time span and you're hitting your head against the wall thinking, why can't you just talk properly and be together? You're not going to like this book. But for some reason, there is something about that kind of storyline where people feel like they are really destined to be together and life and the world is just sort of pulling them apart and taking them in completely different directions that I really like. I got really emotionally invested in this. I just thought it was great. Next we've got Rewitched by Lucy Jane Wood. I'm biased when I talk about this book. I'm lucky enough that Lucy is one of my very good friends, so how can I not say good things about this book? I am passionate about this and I think that is where it's going to sit. It is such a lovely story about finding yourself again, and it's really nice to read a book with a female protagonist that is not really young. The main character is about to turn 30, so it was nice reading something from the perspective of someone who is my stage of life, I guess, and the story of having lost your spark but going on a bit of a self-discovery journey to get that back was brilliant. And I really liked the fact that it was like magical realism, so it was set in the real world but you still have the magical element of it rather than it being a completely make-believe fantasy world. And the fact that there was romance in it but romance wasn't the driving force of this book, I loved as well, because I feel like when I read a lot of romance books, romance is the plot. That's all there is to it. So the fact that this had romantic moments and romantic interest but was so much more than that, and it was about the love between family and friends and the people that you choose to have around you and the people who are supporting you when you have lost your spark and you are trying to rediscover that. It was beautiful. And the thing is, I actually know that even though I've said I'm biased because I'm friends with Lucy, I would love this book even if I didn't know who Lucy was. I think you should read it. That's all I'm gonna say. Next up is Legends and Lattes, and this was a really nice little cozy read when I was still craving fantasy, but I didn't want anything that felt high stakes. I didn't want war, and I didn't want to worry about characters that I love dying, because so many of the characters you absolutely adore in fantasy books, the authors go, sorry, they are dead now. And I can't take that all of the time. And this was a really nice compromise. I'm gonna put it in Close But No Cigar. Like, I enjoyed it. I don't think I'm gonna rave about it anytime soon. If you want something that is very specifically cozy fantasy, quite like wholesome vibes, then this is a really good option, but it's not going to be at the top of my list when people come to me for recommendations, if you get what I mean. And actually, I think somewhere on this list, I have got Pages to Fill, which was a tiny, tiny little section at the back of my Kindle version of Legends and Lattes. So it technically counts as a separate title, but it was about 30 pages long, so it's not even really a book. But I am gonna put that in Go Go Give Us Nothing, because I don't think I really learned anything new. I don't think it was really necessary. If that hadn't been at the end of the book and I didn't know existed, my life would be no worse off for it. Next is Piglet by Lottie Hazel. Immediately, I know that this is going in a waste of my time. For some reason, I went into this book thinking I was going to really love it. By whatever way it had been marketed at the time, I thought it sounded like it was going to be a book that I loved, and I didn't. It was difficult for me to get through. I think I probably should have DNF'd it, and again, I just have trouble doing that. Next up is Funny Story by Emily Henry. And Emily Henry is an auto-buy author for me. Anytime she releases a book, I will buy it, I will read it, and I know I will love it. This one is gonna go I'm passionate about this. It didn't alter my brain chemistry. I think it really takes a lot for romance to alter my brain chemistry. There has to be something in it that is so special. I loved this story though. I love Emily Henry. In my eyes, she really can do no wrong. And if you need good romance books and you haven't read anything from her, she's got a good backlog that you can work through and know you are going to be satisfied every single time. Next is The Wood at Midwinter by Susanna Clarke. And this one, it's a short story. I want to say it was only 60 pages maybe, so it really didn't give me enough that I'm like wowed and passionate about this. But what it did give me was a really nice introduction to the way Susanna Clarke writes, and she's got several books where they are on my TBR. So the fact that I could read this little like snippet of her writing, I think has bumped those other ones up my list. I think I'll reach for them sooner than if I hadn't read this one at all. But for a 60-page book, there's little that you could do in 60 pages that would absolutely floor me. So I think I'm gonna go with Close But No Cigar. God, okay, I have already done so much talking and there are still so many to go. So I'm gonna try and maybe get through some of these a little bit quicker. The Christmas Orphans Club by Becca Freeman. This one to me was Close But No Cigar. I went into this thinking I was gonna really love it. It was fine. There were parts of it that really bothered me. They felt like they were a bit drawn out, a bit unnecessary. And sometimes I really struggle with books where there are lots of time jumps or different POVs, and this had both. I can do dual POV, I can do time jumps, but dual POV with time jumps felt a bit much. And sometimes I was going, okay, what's even happening here? Who's talking? How far back have we jumped? And the premise of it with found family was lovely. The FMC was a bit whingy at times. The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year by Ali Carter. This one, I think I'm putting in I am passionate about this. I really enjoyed it. I went into it not really knowing what to expect, but I had already read a couple of like seasonal festive books and none of them were really giving me the Christmassy festive feeling that I wanted from a book. And I asked on my Instagram stories for some suggestions and this one came up quite a lot. So because it was repeatedly recommended, felt like I could trust it, and it was like a murder mystery romance. And I thought it was so good. And what it did make me do was download a sample of another Ali Carter book. I think it's called The Blonde Identity, but I liked the writing enough that I want to read more from the author, and I think that's a really good mark of a book. All right, next we've got Iron Flame, but obviously we need to do Fourth Wing first. I was late to the party with this one. Everyone raved about Fourth Wing when it first came out, and I kind of avoided it because you know when something is so hyped, you go, oh, I don't know if it's ever going to live up to that, and I don't want to be involved in like all the noise about it at the moment. And then when Iron Flame came out, everyone seemed disappointed in it, and I was like, well, do I really want to bother then? But there was something that made me pick it up last year. I couldn't even really tell you what it was, but I'm glad I did. I would say I am passionate about Fourth Wing. I did not expect to enjoy it anywhere near as much as I did. I cried, I sobbed at the end of it, and I think so far I've really kept this video spoiler free, so I'm not going to start talking about what it is that made me cry, but if you've read the book, you'll probably know the bit that I mean. If you haven't read it, go and read it. I love it. And actually, as I'm filming this, Onyx Storm comes out tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to it, but I am also prepared to be devastated. I'm scared. The thought of reading Onyx Storm tomorrow fills me with joy and dread at the same time. Iron Flame, however, I am going to say Close But No Cigar. It was good. I enjoyed it. And I actually think when it first came out and everyone was so disappointed in it, I feel like that was maybe a bit harsh. Loads of people say that they like didn't enjoy it at all. They DNF'd it. It was terrible, and I don't agree with that. I really liked it. Was it as good as Fourth Wing? No. Do I think this next one is going to redeem Iron Flame? Yes. Do I love these characters? Do I love this world? Do I love this story? This everything about it? Yes, I do. Is the Empyrean series gonna destroy me? Yeah. But there's 5 books overall, so Onyx Storm isn't going to be the one to completely finish me off, but I do think it's going to do big things to my heart. The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. Straight away, go girl, give us nothing. I didn't really enjoy this. I won't lie. It didn't do it for me. So many people loved this book, and I just thought it was quite nothing. Quite average. The story was fine, the characters were fine. It didn't do anything for me. It's forgettable at best. The Dinner by Herman Koch? Don't know. I kind of want to put it in a waste of my time. I feel like that's fair. I didn't really enjoy it. I didn't like the way it was written, particularly. I just feel like the whole way it was carried out was a bit annoying, to be honest. It didn't do anything for me. I just feel like that took away time from reading a book that I could have really loved. The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. I've actually read, I want to say 3 Ashley Poston books this year, but I can only see 2 of them. No, I can see 3 of them. We're all good. I'm going to talk about these ones together. And first off, I am actually going to start with The 7 Year Slip, because that book altered my brain chemistry. That book was so unbelievably good. I went into it, again, not really knowing what was going to happen because I don't read plots, I don't read birds, I don't read synopsises, descriptions, nothing, nada. I pick a book and I go, yeah, that's fine, that is what I'm going to read. And that is probably how I end up reading stuff that is a waste of my time. I've only got myself to blame. But this book was my first like little delve into magical realism, and it was just incredible. I loved the stories, I loved the characters. It made me feel really emotional. I felt really emotionally tied to it. And the way that Ashley Poston writes is beautiful, it's incredible. I just cannot rave about this book enough. I felt bereft when I finished it. I was like, what am I going to do now? Where do I go? How does it get any better than this? That's a special feeling that doesn't come around all the time. And for this one, it really did. However, our other two books, The Dead Romantics and A Novel Love Story, they're both going in. Actually, I was going to put them in the same category, and I think that would be wrong of me. The Dead Romantics is going to go in I'm passionate about this. That one I loved. It didn't quite alter my brain chemistry. I think maybe because it had already been altered by the 7-year slip, but I loved it. I think the premise of all of Ashley Poston's stories are so unique and interesting and just a really good take on romance novels. However, A Novel Love Story fell flat for me. I'm going to put that in Close But No Cigar. I still really loved the way it was written, but the story itself I didn't completely gel with. And I know a lot of people feel differently about it and really loved the story of it, but for me, it just didn't do it. I think it maybe had something to do with like the place names and the character names, and it all felt just a little bit too, maybe a bit twee. But Ashley Poston is still an auto-buy author for me. I know she's got another book coming out this year, and I will buy it, I will read it, and I know I'm gonna love it. If you haven't read Ashley Poston before, do it. You will not regret it. You've reached Sam. I feel really bad for this because I know a lot of people like it, but I'm gonna put it in a waste of my time. No. Yes, I am actually. I was gonna maybe put it in Go Go It Was Nothing, but I just didn't get on well with this book. I think it was maybe written with a younger audience in mind, and I read a lot of YA, so that isn't always a problem for me, but for this particular book, I didn't love the story. I think that the female main character was really whiny and annoying and quite selfish a lot of the time, and I think sometimes in a book that is necessary and it's quite a good plot driver, but for this, she just got on my nerves. Guilty by Definition by Susie Dent. This one, I feel like I'm going to put that in Close But No Cigar, which is becoming my big category. I love Susie Dent. I'm a big word nerd. I am fascinated by etymology, the origins of language. So the fact that this story was set at the Oxford Dictionary place of work, you know, the Oxford Dictionary, I thought I was gonna be like absolutely head over heels in love with it. It was quite an interesting story. I did like it, but I didn't find myself like racing through it or like desperate to pick it back up and find out what happens next. So I feel like Close But No Cigar is fitting for that one. Now we've got the Lightlark trilogy by Alex Astor. And I feel like Lightlark and Skyshade are both gonna go in I'm passionate about this, and then Nightbane is gonna go in Close But No Cigar. I absolutely devoured Lightlark and Skyshade. Actually, I read them back to back, and then I had to wait before Nightbane came out, and I really loved this book. Again, it's got trials in it, and I am a trials girl. I really learned last year, if there are trials in a book, I want to read it. And these two were really good. The world building and like the fantasy magic structure of it, again, I think is really unique. Sometimes when you read fantasy, they can kind of feel like they all follow a bit of a formula, but these ones really did feel like they are different from the rest, and I loved that. And I want to say that this is maybe going to be 5 books total, or I think I read or I heard, don't know. So I do think there is time for the rest of the stories to be redeemed, considering book number 3 did dip into Close But No Cigar. But that one, it just felt like it was being dragged out a little bit with the love triangle, and that's not a triangle, that's like a diamond. I don't know why I did that. And the whole I'm mad at you but I still love you, it just feels like you want to give the character a bit of a head wobble. So it felt like a little bit frustrating at times. The series as a whole so far, I love. And I also know that Alex Astor has a romance book coming out this year, which is called Summer in the City, and I'm desperate to read that once it's released because I love the way these were written, and obviously these are fantasy books, so I'm really interested to see what she does with a romance book. Metal Slinger by Rachel Schneider, Alter My Brain Chemistry. This book I think about all the time, and I read it because Emmy recommended it. She was the first person I ever heard speak about it. It felt like she kind of paved the way for this book, and I'm so glad she did because I just fell in love with this story. It felt like it had quite a unique take on fantasy in terms of the world building, the magic system, everything like that. And the plot twist at the end was absolutely insane. unhinged, unmatched, jaw-dropping. And it's so funny because even going into the book, Emmy had said there is a big plot twist, so I knew it was coming up, but it still got me real good. And that's a sign of a good plot twist. I didn't see it coming. When it did arrive, I was upset, and this book is one that I have not stopped thinking about since. I read it months and months ago now, and I still think about it constantly. And the second book, it is going to be a duology. I'm really hoping is released sometime this year, but I know that Rachel is still writing it, so I'm patiently waiting for that. I don't want to rush her because I don't want it to be a bad second book. I want to give her the time and the space that she needs to finish it and do her thing with it, because Metal Slinger was so good, but I am kind of desperate to read the second one, so Rachel, come on, girl. Okay, we're getting towards the end now. We've got Daydream by Hannah Grace. I really like this book, but I feel like I'm going to put it in Close But No Cigar. It's one of those books that I do like because it is part of an interconnected standalone series, so you get a lot of crossover of characters, and I quite like that when the focal point is on a completely different set of people, but then you still get like the little cameos from the other characters that you've already read about, you know their story, and it's nice to see them, see how they're doing, have a little catch up with them. So for that, I really liked it. I also really liked the fact that I felt like I could relate a lot to the FMC in this, because she is an eldest daughter with people-pleasing syndrome. Same girl. And there were a lot of points of this book where I was like, oh my god, I know exactly how that feels. This one was a really good one, but I feel like it falls into that category of romances where they're like good but not great, and they're easy, quick reads, but they're not anything to write home about. Sorry, don't kill me. I know people love them. Next is The Butterfly Tattoo by Philip Pullman. It was quite a short story, similar to Shy by Max Porter, and I really liked it, but you don't really have enough time to get into the nitty-gritty of all the characters and what's going on in their lives. I feel like you form maybe slightly less of an emotional attachment to any of them. I did like the story. Philip Pullman is one of my favourite authors, maybe of all time. The His Dark Materials series is one of my like top series, and it was nice to read something slightly different from him, but it didn't wow me, and it's not going to replace my love for His Dark Materials. Take Me Home is also Close But No Cigar. It was nice, it was an easy read, it was like a silly fun time. I liked the characters, I liked the story, but it's not one that I am in a rush to recommend. The House Witch, I feel like maybe I'm going to put that in Close But No Cigar again. This is another one where I was craving like cozy fantasy, low stakes, good time, and I really liked this book. I liked the way it was written. There are actually more in this series that I do want to go back to at some point. I'm not in like a desperate rush to get back to them though. I know that I will read them at some point, but they're not like high priority on my list. But it was good, and if you're specifically craving low stakes cozy fantasy, it's a really, really good option to go for. The Little Coffee Shop of Terrors. Gwen Stefani should read that, you know? I hated that book, and I don't know why I didn't DNF it, but I didn't. I'm upset with myself for not DNFing it. I thought it was going to be really good, and I just continued to be disappointed with it the longer I read it. It was annoying. The story was a bit weird, and then by the end of it I was like, oh, well, glad that's over. That's all that needs to be said about it. Next, we've got House of Flame and Shadow, which is the third in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. Where am I going to put this? This is hard. I'm going to put it in Close But No Cigar, you know? This book felt like your brain was put inside a pinball machine and you were just being rattled around the whole time. I didn't know what way was up. I love the series as a whole. This book, though, I wasn't in love with it. It was very full on. There were so many different like characters, POVs, and all these different things trying to do so much that kind of overwhelmed me, to be honest. That being said though, Crescent City as a whole, I do love. It will never beat Throne of Glass for me. I am a Throne of Glass girl, first and foremost. I do like it overall. Things I Wanted to Say But Never Did by Monica Murphy. Gwen Stefani should also read that. It was my first book of the year and it was like a 1-star. I was so upset with myself for not DNFing it and having such a bad start to my reading year last year. I did not like it. There was not a single part of it that I enjoyed. There, I said it. Gal in Pieces by Kathleen Glasgow. Did it alter my brain chemistry, or am I just passionate about it? I want to say it altered my brain chemistry, you know? I think it deserves to be up there. It was a really good book. Check trigger warnings if you need to. I feel like the front cover kind of tells you what you need to know about that. It was fantastic. It was a story that I really felt a connection to, I fell in love with, and not necessarily because I loved the main character, but just because I loved the way her story was told. And I really want to read some more Kathleen Glasgow books this year. I'm kind of surprised that I didn't last year actually, because I read Gal in Pieces quite early on in the year, loved it, and then just didn't read any more more of her books, even though I'm pretty sure she's got several. But Kathleen Glasgow is an author that I definitely want to read more from this year. Wicked by Gregory Maguire. I'm gonna put this in Go Girl Give Us Nothing. I read this book for 2 reasons. One, because the film was being released and promoted so heavily, I was intrigued about how different the book was. I always knew it was different and that the Broadway version was a very loose adaptation of this story. Curiosity got the better of me and I wanted to know how different it was. And the second reason I read it is because my friend Amy was doing a I read Wicked so you didn't have to video on it, and she just kind of needed a second pair of eyes on it so she could double check certain things with me, and I was happy to be that person, her sort of assistant if you will. I'll link the video below if you are interested in watching it because it was really good and it means you don't have to put yourself through reading the book. I didn't like it. There were so many parts of it that felt really unnecessary and it felt like a bit of an exercise in Gregory Maguire trying to show off how big his brain and his dick are. I'm not here for that, really. There were some really weird bits of writing in there that felt like they didn't need to be there. It felt like certain things were sexualized when they didn't need to be. It has actually got every trigger warning that you could possibly think of in there. It's got everything. If you want to read it, but I really don't recommend it. The next one is One December Day, and I actually need to double check my Goodreads for this one because I read 2 books with very similar titles, one being One December Day and the other being One Day in December, and I need to make sure that I'm getting these the right way around. One December Day, I am going to put in a waste of my time. I almost put it in Go Girl Give Us Nothing, but actually I just didn't gel with the story, with the characters. It was fine, it wasn't great, and to be honest, that's all that you need to know about that one. One Day in December, however, I really liked that. Am I going to put it in I am passionate about this? Maybe. I'm trying to compare it to the other books that are within that category, and does it sit there for me? Yeah, I actually think it might, you know. I got to the point where I've been filming so long and talking about these books that I feel like I've almost run out of words to say, but I do feel like that baby deserves to be there. I feel like that's the right choice. Haunting Adeline, I feel like, was it a waste of my time or did it just give us nothing? I know people love this book. Maybe like the whole dark romance thing isn't for me, but I really firmly believe that there are books out there that are. But this one just annoyed me at times. I'm going to say that was a waste of my time. I know that there are so many people that are going to disagree with me, and that's fine. We all like different things. The Dreamland Billionaires series, I'm gonna put them all in Go Girl Give Us Nothing, and I feel like that might be controversial as well. They were fine. The whole being set in Disneyland but give it a different name thing really annoyed me. It felt like I couldn't really immerse myself in the story because I kept being dragged out of it by calling Disneyland whatever they called it. I will say my favourite of the 3 was the last one, which was Final Offer. I feel like I like that couple and that story the most, but it also was too long. I remember reading it and going, this book didn't need to be as long as it is. It was fine, and that's all. Next up, we've got The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst, and I'm gonna put this up in I'm passionate about this. This was another cozy fantasy. I was really going through a bit of a phase, and this one I loved. I really liked the concept of it. I really liked the characters. I liked the story. It just felt very like wholesome, heartwarming, and again like quite unique. And it's the type of thing where actually I do want to check whether the author has more books because I enjoyed that enough to want to read more from them. This Time Next Year by Sophie Cousins. Close but no cigar for that, which is really where the majority is sitting. I read this towards the end of the year because it is sat around New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, so it felt like quite fitting time-wise. And for the most part, I did really enjoy it, but I think it was just missing like a little bit of something for me. And I don't even really know what that something is, but there was something that I needed more of. That being said though, I did like it enough to go and see what else Sophie Cousins had written. And last week I read another book of hers called The Good Part. So it's obviously not in this tier ranking because I read it this year, but that was fantastic and I absolutely loved it. It was kind of 13 going on 30-esque and I really loved it, and I felt like in The Good Part I connected with the characters more, I liked the story more, and that one, by the time I was finished with it, I felt really like emotionally connected to it, whereas for This Time Next Year I enjoyed it but I didn't have that connection. And also This Time Next Year has been adapted into a movie on Netflix and I didn't like that, not one bit. I think it was a really poor adaptation. Finally, we are down to our last book, which is Spectacular by Stephanie Garber. And this was a novella that comes after the Caraval series. And for me, I'm gonna put this in Go Girl Give Us Nothing. It was fine. I didn't really like it. I didn't think it was really necessary. It didn't do enough to make me like dive right back into the world. And because it's a novella, not enough happened within it for me to super care about it. It was fine, but as someone who didn't like love Caraval, I don't think a novella from that series was ever going to do much for me. However, if we ever get a Once Upon a Broken Heart novella, I'll be all over that one. That may have taken a really long time. I may have talked way too much, but I enjoyed doing that, and I hope you enjoyed that too. I feel like there are definitely going to be a couple of controversial takes in here when people are like, I don't agree with what you're saying. And like I said, that's fine. Talk to me about it, but in a nice way. Also, if you have any recommendations on what I should read based on what I have in like the top 2 tiers, then I want them. I feel like I've had quite a strong start to my reading year this year, and I really want to carry that on and waste less time reading books I don't enjoy. So if you have any recommendations, give me them. Gimme. And actually my camera is now flashing at me saying, girl, you have talked too much and my battery is about to die. My social battery is about to die just from all of this yapping. So this is a good time to say thank you for watching if you made it this far. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know if there are any other bits of YouTube content that you want to see from me, because I am in the mood to become a big yapper this year. I think I'm going to do an Onyx Storm reading vlog, and I also have plans to do like a reading challenge, which I'm going to start kind of soon. There'll be quite a lot of videos for that one, so there'll be plenty to come and watch. So make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video.